Imagine this for a second. You're running a clinical trial, but instead of just, grabbing data points every few weeks,
Uh-huh.
you've got this constant stream of info, real time. How a patient's actually responding to a new treatment.
Right.
What kind of insights could that unlock? Seriously.
That's a great place to start. Really frames it perfectly because that's exactly what we're diving into today. How these wearable devices are starting to make that continuous monitoring a real thing in clinical trials.
Yeah, it feels like a game changer.
It really could be. It's changing how we track responses.
So for this deep dive, we've sifted through quite a bit, transcripts, book excerpts on, the whole drug development pipeline.
Clinical trials, how drugs move in the body, pharmacokinetics.
Exactly. Regulations,
Yeah.
manufacturing the works. And our mission really is to pull out the key nuggets. How is this wearable tech actually being integrated?
How's the data used?
And crucially, how does it potentially improve things for patients in these studies? We want to give you that shortcut, a solid grasp, without getting totally bogged down.
Makes sense.
So let's kick off with the why. Why do we even need this continuous monitoring? What was wrong with the old way?
Well, the traditional way, it was really about snapshots, wasn't it?
Intermittent, yeah.
Exactly. A patient visits the clinic maybe once a month, maybe less, get some measurements, answer questions.
But that's just one moment.
Precisely. It misses everything that happens between those visits. And our bodies, patient responses, they aren't static. They fluctuate. So those occasional checks, they often just couldn't capture the real dynamics of how a drug was working over time. Or maybe not working.
It's like trying to understand a movie by only watching 5 random minutes.
Good analogy, yeah. You miss the plot, the character development,
Yeah.
all the important stuff.
So wearables promise to fill those gaps. Give us that continuous flow. What kind of data are we actually talking about here? It's more than just step counting, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Way beyond basic step counting now. The tech has really leaped forward.
Huh.
We're talking continuous heart rate monitoring and heart rate variability that tells you about nervous system activity, stress, detailed activity levels, not just steps, but intensity, duration, sleep patterns are huge.
Right. Quality of sleep, not just hours.
Exactly. How long, sleep cycles, disturbances, skin temperature is another one. And things are moving towards continuous glucose monitoring, other biomarkers. It's expanding fast.
Wow. So you get this much, much richer, more holistic view of the patient's experience.
That's the idea. You start seeing trends, patterns emerge over time that you'd completely miss otherwise.
And connecting that back to the drug.
Right. That continuous stream lets researchers see the body's response in much finer detail, instead of one blood pressure reading at the clinic.
You see it across the whole day.
Yeah, how it changes, how the treatment might be influencing those changes day in, day out. That level of granularity, it's potentially invaluable for understanding the real impact.
Okay, so the potential's clear. We've got this fire hose of data coming in, but how does it actually, fit into the rigid structure of a clinical trial? It can't be just plug and play, right?
No, definitely not. That's a really critical point. Just having the data isn't the solution. It needs to be integrated properly, thoughtfully.
What does that involve?
Several key things. First, the wearables themselves. They need validation.
Meaning?
Rigorous testing to make sure they're accurate, reliable over time. You can't base decisions on faulty data.
Makes sense.
They also need to be user-friendly. Patients aren't all tech wizards, so easy to wear, easy to manage.
Right, minimize the burden.
Then there's the whole data infrastructure. Secure collection, secure storage, managing these huge volumes of data. Privacy is paramount.
Absolutely.
And finally, you need the tools, the analytical methods, to actually make sense of this continuous stream, to pull out the meaningful signals from the noise.
So it's a whole ecosystem that needs to function smoothly. From the patient's wrist, essentially, all the way to the data analysis. And where are we seeing the benefits? Across all phases of trials, even early on.
Yeah, potentially across the board. In those very early phase 1 trials where safety is the main focus, wearable data can offer much more sensitive red flags for side effects, maybe subtle but persistent changes in heart rate patterns or sleep quality.
Things you might miss with just monthly check-ins.
Precisely. So you get earlier warnings, potentially allowing quicker action to protect patients, than later in efficacy trials.
Phase 2, phase 3.
Right. The continuous data gives a more dynamic picture of whether the drug is actually working. Think about, say, a trial for a pain drug.
Okay.
Continuous activity tracking might show a patient becoming consistently more mobile over time. That's objective evidence that complements them, saying, yeah, my pain feels better.
That's powerful. Objective data alongside the subjective report. Can you give another concrete example? How might this data show a positive response?
Sure. Let's take a trial for sleep medication. Traditionally, you might use sleep diaries, maybe an overnight lab study, which is pretty artificial.
Right, not their normal environment.
With a wearable, you track sleep duration, stages deep sleep, REM sleep awakenings, night after night in their own bed.
Much more realistic.
If the treatment works, you'd hope to see maybe consistently longer sleep, more deep sleep, fewer wake-ups, all captured objectively. It paints a much clearer, more ecologically valid picture of the impact.
That really highlights the difference.
Okay.
What about the flip side? How does this help spot problems, or if a treatment just isn't cutting it?
This is where that continuous baseline is so valuable.
The patient's normal.
Exactly. If you see significant, sustained deviations from their usual activity levels or heart rate patterns, that could signal a problem. Well, maybe a steady decrease in activity for someone being treated for depression. That might suggest, unfortunately, that the treatment isn't helping with energy or motivation. Or maybe persistent, weird changes in vital signs captured by the wearables. That could be an early warning of an adverse effect that needs checking out fast.
So earlier detection of things going wrong or just not going right.
Yes. And that allows for quicker adjustments, maybe change the dose, maybe even stop the drug if needed. It really prioritizes patient safety. And, this fits with that broader push in drug development we saw mentioned about using pharmacodynamic endpoints, biomarkers, even in the preclinical stage, the animal studies, to get a fuller picture of a drug's effects right from the start.
So it's about building that comprehensive understanding from lab bench to bedside, and now continuously at the bedside or on the wrist.
Well put, yes.
This really sounds like it could push us towards more personalized medicine, even within the trial itself, tailoring treatment based on this real-time feedback.
That's one of the most exciting prospects, I think. The potential is huge. Continuous monitoring means we could maybe move beyond the standard dose for everyone.
How so?
Well, imagine a wearable consistently shows a patient's heart rate spikes after a certain dose. The trial team sees that pattern.
And maybe considers tweaking the dose down for that specific patient.
Exactly. Or conversely, if someone's physiological markers just aren't budging at the standard dose, maybe an increase could be considered, guided by their individual data.
Fine-tuning in real time.
It holds that promise, yeah. More effective treatments, potentially with fewer side effects, because they're better matched to the individual's response.
That feels like a significant step forward. And the safety aspect you mentioned earlier, detection. That's fundamental.
Absolutely fundamental. Thinking back to some of the material on drug safety testing.
And non-clinical stuff.
Yeah. A key goal there is always finding that safe starting dose, understanding the toxicity profile. Wearables in the clinical phase give us this incredibly granular way to monitor for those potential toxicities in humans.
Extending that safety vigilance.
And with more precision. It can even give insights into whether toxicities are reversible, which is crucial information, now potentially tracked continuously in people.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising, but it can't be all smooth sailing.
Yeah.
What are the bumps in the road, the challenges?
Oh, there are definitely challenges, big ones. Data quality is number one.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much. The devices have to be accurate and reliable. Consistent. Then there's data security and patient privacy. We're talking sensitive health data.
Hugely important. Needs robust protection.
Absolutely critical. And then there's the user aspect. Not everyone's comfortable with tech.
Right, the digital divide or just varying levels of tech savviness.
Exactly. So the devices, the apps, the interfaces they need to be super user-friendly, accessible, not burdensome. Otherwise, you risk excluding people or getting poor data because they can't use it properly.
Those are really practical, significant hurdles to clear.
Yeah.
Now, one other thread we looked at was related to OPR&D.
Right, the pharmaceutical quality and manufacturing side.
Yeah, often focused on things like chemical synthesis, process optimization. Seems a bit different from patient monitoring. Is there a connection?
It might seem different on the surface, but I think there's a really interesting underlying connection.
Oh, yeah.
Think about what drives OPR&D. It's about gathering the best data on reaction yields, impurities, process parameters to optimize the outcome, right? To make the manufacturing process better, more efficient, more reliable.
Okay, data-driven optimization.
Exactly. And isn't that fundamentally what we're talking about with wearables and trials? Gathering better, more comprehensive data.
To optimize the understanding of the treatment and ultimately patient outcomes.
Precisely. The meticulous attention to detail in optimizing a chemical step or ensuring process control. That same kind of rigorous, data-focused approach is needed to successfully integrate wearables. Both are striving for greater precision, deeper understanding through better data.
That's a great parallel. It links the lab bench and manufacturing floor with the clinic through that common thread of data-driven improvement. Really ties it together.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways on wearables and patient monitoring in clinical trials, if you had to boil it down?
Sure. I'd say the main thing is wearable tech is a genuinely powerful new tool for continuous patient monitoring. It's not hype.
Right.
This real-time, continuous data gives us a much, much richer understanding of treatment response compared to the old ways.
More comprehensive.
Definitely. And this has real potential to boost patient safety through early detection, enable more personalized treatments, and ultimately, hopefully, lead to better outcomes.
But with caveats.
Absolutely. Challenges around data quality, security, usability, they're real and need careful management. But overall, it's a transformative shift towards more informative, efficient, and patient-focused trials.
That sums it up brilliantly. It's been fascinating, really, to see how this tech is reshaping such a core part of getting new medicines developed. The level of detail is just amazing.
It is pretty remarkable.
So hopefully for everyone listening, this deep dive has given you a solid handle on this really dynamic field, a good foundation.
Hope so.
And to leave you with something to chew on. As wearables become even more embedded, not just in trials, but in everyday healthcare. Think about this. How might this constant flow of personal health data fundamentally change how we even think about diseases and how we develop therapies in the future? What are the implications of the ethical, practical, scientific as we head towards a future awash in continuous health data? Something to ponder.